Dear colleagues, dear sisters and brothers, I have the pleasure to address this message to you on the occasion of the Regional Conference on Indigenous Self-Governance, Civic Space, Democracy and Pluralism. I regret that I am not able to attend in person. The conference coincides with my reporting to the 51st session of the United Nations Human Rights Council. I am presenting my annual thematic report, which in this year dedicated to the role of Indigenous women as a keepers of scientific and technical knowledge and the importance of this knowledge being preserved and transmitted. I would like to congratulate the Asian Indigenous People Pact, who organized this important event in partnership with the Global Center for Pluralism, the International Work Group for Indigenous Affairs, and Diplomacy Training Program. I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to address you and express my support and solidarity for the important work you will be doing these 2 days. Pluralism and open and safe civic space are interrelated imperatives for the realization of Indigenous people's rights. Following a regional consultation with Indigenous people in Asia in Bangkok in 2019, my predecessor in the mandate pointed out that while a number of Asian countries provide some level of legal recognition to Indigenous people, significant gaps exist between legislation and practice. She also observes that legislative inconsistencies leave Indigenous people marginalized or simply excluded from society. Indigenous people in Asia and elsewhere in the world unfortunately continue to be stigmatized in the public sphere, including the media. They suffer from systemic discrimination between state structures that go against their ways of life and understanding of the world. Those who stand up for their right or express dissent and disagreement in the public sphere are too frequently attacked or criminalized, prosecuted for doing so. Indigenous peoples are excluded from accessing essential information regarding projects that will affect their territories. Indigenous women suffer barriers to political participation for women included the failure to provide materials in indigenous languages, transportation means, and security concerns. Despite progress in this area, Indigenous women continue to suffer discrimination that too often leads to their disenfranchisement and underrepresentation in public life. Multiple intersecting forms of discrimination create barriers to women development and use of their scientific knowledge, including access to land and resources, educational and employment opportunities, healthcare, political participation in national and local governance, including environmental planning, labor protection, infrastructure, and social services and legal systems. I believe we must continue to convince states that strengthening legal recognition, autonomy, and self-governance among indigenous peoples should be viewed as part of nation building rather than as posing or a risk of fragmentation. States must come to understand that recognition will result in societies based on inclusiveness and increase the legitimacy of the state. Effective implementation of the right to autonomy and self-governance of indigenous people inherently implies significant change in the governance of states' authorities. In order to, in order to put indigenous institutions and territorial authorities on an equal footing with the state structures and open channels of communication among the state's plural institutions to learn from each other and harmonize their respective and shared processes. My mandate has explored some of the benefits of pluralism between states in a report dedicated to the interaction between indigenous and state justice system. Intercultural dialogue and meaningful engagement between indigenous and state justice system are needed in order for them to coordinate and harmonize their coexistence and to strengthen respect for human rights in both systems. This is why I believe that implementing pluralism between states can lead to improved human rights compliance, including by remedying discrimination, marginalization, and inequality, and by building more democratic, participatory, and inclusive society, and ultimately enhancing sustainable development for all. I look forward to learning the conclusion and recommendation formulated by this Honorable Assembly towards creating a civic space that is safe and enabling for Indigenous people, in particular Indigenous women, and to promote autonomous Indigenous institutions and processes as an integral part of a state's system on an equal footing with non-Indigenous institutions. I wish everyone a very fruitful and enriching experience. Thank you very much for your attention.